right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our third edition of Let's Chit Chat with Narine Dat. This is a local initiative with a global impact. And today in this studio, I have my good friend, community um, builder, I would like to say, who is not a stranger here, but you will get to know him more. And for those of you who know him already, I'm sure you're curious to know what else he has to offer and share with us and so on. But a few minutes ago, we had a quick chit chat and he shared some unique stuff with me. And so I will be asking him more along that line. But Marinus, am I saying your name correctly?
Yes, Marinus.
Look at that. I get it right the first time. I like it. It's a good start. So thank you so much for taking the time off your busy schedule to join us here on our little daytime talk show. Let's chit chat with Narine Dat. So welcome to you, sir.
Glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
All right. So we're going to get right into it because you yourself have so much to share, and I'm excited that you're here. And so I don't want to steal time from you. This is basically about you. And so why don't you take a minute or so or a couple of minutes to introduce yourself to our listeners, to the people who are watching. And by the way, feel free to share our page, like our page, so that way you can have, you can keep yourself informed.
Okay, most people know me as Martin de Groot. And I've been around for a long time, involved in various things, especially in the local arts.
That's right.
I used to be the executive director of the Waterloo Regional Arts Council, and I've also been active on various boards.
I will put this a little bit closer here so people can hear you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, there you go.
So I've done that for like 30 years.
Wow.
I also write a column for the Waterloo Region Record. It comes out every Saturday, and the column is focused on arts and culture. The column actually predates. I've done that now for 21 years this September, so I'm going into my 22nd year, and it actually predates my involvement with the Waterloo Regional Arts Council. So the column came first, and the column continues. And currently, I'm employed with the Commons Studio. It used to be known as the Multicultural Cinema Club.
Yeah.
And it's part of the Working Center, which is a large, diverse community service organization. So I'm part of that.
Good. And so you mentioned, and I mean, I'm aware of this, but you mentioned that you've been in the arts, for about 30 years or over 30 years. So what got you into the arts in the first place?
It was by chance in some ways. I've been out of the country. I know the exact date. It came around, not the exact date, but last year. 1993. Yeah? I think September 1993.
Oh, wow.
And I had been out of the country for 3 years, came back to Kitchener. And when you looked around Kitchener, the recession had hit the city pretty hard.
For sure.
And you could see visible signs of that in the street. It was clearly there was something wrong. And then they had just built City Hall, the brand new Kitchener City Hall. And the Downtown Business Association and the council put on this conference. They called it Visions 93. And
I like that.
I ended up going to this Visions 93. But in part because my mother-in-law had been invited, and I just tagged along. So I thought that might be interesting. And then at that conference, going to the various presentations, etc., and meeting new people and all that, it suddenly dawned on me, like a conversion experience. I suddenly thought, wow, this is important. A major Canadian city, 10th, 11th largest Canadian city, clearly ailing in some way. It's interesting in that there's no simple explanation as to what's happening, it's challenging. So I thought, I'm going to get involved with this. Particularly, the emphasis was particularly on the downtown and downtown revitalization. So I went out and started volunteering for some things. I met Councillor Mike Wagner at that conference, and he invited me to come on what was then called LACAC. Now it's called Heritage Kitchener, but LACAC is the local architectural conservation advisory committee.
Oh wow, it's a big
That was
change
the
in
first
name
thing
there.
I got involved with, and at the same time, there were a group of people who were all alumni of St. Jerome's High School and St. Mary's High School, and they called themselves the drama alumni, between the two schools.
Mm-hmm.
And they were interested in restoring a lovely small theater in the now abandoned St. Jerome's site.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an empty building and it had, they called it an Edwardian theater. There was a theater in there with wooden seats, and smoked, and they wanted to restore it. So the group was called the Friends of St. Jerome's.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined the Friends of St. Jerome's. I was not like part of the Catholic school system and all that, so I was a little different from the rest of them, but that was an interesting project.
For sure.
Almost at the same time, got involved with Globe Studios, which was at that time in Waterloo. It was called the Globe Studios because it was on the site of the former Globe Furniture Factory. And they were a group of artists who were running sort of a cooperative space, studio space facility. And they had just incorporated, I don't know if you've heard of Artscape in Toronto. It's a major initiative, connected but independent from the city of Toronto, that develops spaces and also maintains them. So they had copied more or less the same objectives and applied them to Waterloo region. And so that was my third. But early on, the original interest was downtown revitalization. And it was clear almost from the very beginning that there was this logical sort of synergy there, this potential synergy. All these arts-related groups were emerging. They had all kinds of energies. They were younger. They were vital. There were things happening there. Meanwhile, downtown, everything was sort of
For sure,
empty
absolutely.
spaces. One of the things the arts groups needed a lot was space. So it just seemed a logical connection. It's also, things change. So the purposes that a downtown served in the 1930s and 40s and 50s were no longer the same. So if you add the arts to that, it could be part of the solution for revitalization.
For sure. So you mentioned some very interesting things. So you mentioned that started around 1993.
Yeah.
And the thing that's common to me along that line is that I came to this country in 1993.
Okay, yeah.
So when you mentioned something very interesting. You mentioned about the recession.
Yeah.
And so definitely when we came here, 7 people we came. I was one of 7 people. The youngest in the family, and I can still remember that recession. It was so difficult to find a job, and if you do find a job, it probably lasts for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, not necessarily permanent jobs and so on. And speaking of that, I can tell you for sure, I think that's probably one of the reasons I get into this job sector, in terms of wanting to work in a job sector, because I feel as if I have lots to contribute. I think that's one of the reasons I became a job developer to begin with, because I've kind of seen it, the difficulties, especially when, it was difficult for everybody to find meaningful work and work in general. But think about it, how difficult it was for people who are newer in the area, newer to the country, probably not speaking the language as strong, didn't have any sort of connection, networking, all of that, and the arts, I remember when I wrote a poetry book called The Teenage Years. I wrote it when I was a teenager, and so that's how the name came about. And so I remember when the City Hall, I'm not sure if they still do it, and I'll kind of feel bad to say this, but because I'm so involved with so many different things, I can't be everywhere anymore. That's the nature of things. But they used to have, and you can correct me, or maybe you could let me know, they used to have an event at the City Hall called some Toonie Tuesday or something.
Yeah.
Every so, I think within the summer month or something. Do they still have it, or are you not sure?
I think there may be still some variation.
Something along that line. Could be changed, different.
Yeah, it could be changed. And even that had originally been, it was the artist in residence, the first artist in residence at Kitchener City Hall, Nicholas Reese, who's a good friend of mine, I think in 1995 that started. He was going to say, we're going to have I forget now what he called it, something Tuesdays. And they changed it to the Tuesday, and it became an ongoing tradition.
Well, there you go. I do remember that. And the reason why I brought it up is that they saw, because obviously they were trying to get as many people involved as possible, local artists, in whatever way possible, whether that be musician, writers, poetry, all of that. And so they've seen some of my local writings. I'm not a Shakespeare type of writer, but I write to the best of my ability and so on. And they've seen some of my poetry, but my poetry, it was it has a lot of meaning in terms of what's happening and all of that, and a lot of people can relate to it. They don't have to have a high level of English understanding before they can read and understand and so on. And I think they fell in love with it, by the way. so they asked me if it's okay to read some of these poems on stage, and I said absolutely, and they ended up paying me as well to it. So think about that. I was young, I was a teenager, they paid me for that. It was not a lot of money, but it was the fact that they saw value in my work. I think honestly it was motivating for me. It was motivating for me to take things to the next step, and stuff like that thing. That kind. I think that's one of the reasons. I end up, initiate like the Caribbean Dreams concert and so on, which is like so successful and all of that. And I think it's all started off with little things and everybody coming together with ideas and recognizing it. I think it's important when somebody has an idea. I think it's so important for people to recognize it, acknowledge it, and I think that's what that event has done. And as you mentioned, the show, the name probably has changed, but but the event probably grown so much more, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's something Kitchener's done very well to include people and to try new things, and at least it
Absolutely.
used to be that way. And it's wonderful because you never know where these things, how they bear fruit.
Absolutely.
Right? In this case, it made a big difference for you.
For sure. It definitely did for me, because just the fact that they recognized that, that the poetry wasn't was good enough to share to the public. That was a good thing for me, and the fact that they kind of offer me a little bit of incentive, especially at that age. It was a motivator for me, and I think that's a great thing. And I'm glad that it's changed and change. Speaking of change. Change is not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
Because the name has changed, because you really want to be inclusive as possible, even with and because we're talking about arts here. I remember when we started our Caribbean Dreams concert, we first started off naming it we call it the Guyanese event. That's what we used to call it, right? And then we realized that we want to broaden it, so we call it we used to call it the Indo-Caribbean Dreams. And then we realized we want to broaden it more, so we removed the Indo, we call it Caribbean Dreams, right? And then eventually, we were thinking that we probably would call it the Canadian Dreams, really. But at the same, when you think about it, because we have grown, because on our show we've had like belly dancing, and we've had the Canadian Idol finalists, all of that. So it has grown. So I think that's something we will consider. But I don't want to take with time from you. So what we are going to do, you brought up earlier about one thing I'm interested to know of, and you can, and this is a freestyle show. You share whatever you want to share. Anything that's good for daytime TV is fine. But you brought up very interesting. Although I thought I knew everything about you, I was wrong. You told me that you went to. We have lots of West Indian people watching and listening right now. You said to me you taught in Jamaica for 3 years. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, my training is in history. I have a PhD.
Oh wow,
in
amazing.
U.S. history, North American history is my specialty. And when I say I've been out of the country for 3 years in 1993, that's where I was.
That's what I taught.
I had the great fortune. We had a professor at the U of W history department. His name is Michael Creighton, who's very well known in the Caribbean because he wrote history of West Indies and all that. And he had a connection there. They called him up. They needed somebody at the last minute to come in and teach North American history. So he called me up out of the blue. I'd never studied under him or anything, but he knew who I was and I knew who he was. And he said, "Hey, how would you like to go to Jamaica and teach for a year?" And I thought, "Oh, sure." At the time, I hadn't quite finished my PhD yet. And had drifted away from my studies. I've been working full time at. You've ever seen the goat milk cheese?
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
Woolwich Dairy.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah.
I was production manager at
No.
Woolwich Dairy
You're kidding me.
for like 4 or 5 years. And
Oh,
it was a
wow.
wonderful experience too, but that's
Oh,
another
yeah.
story.
Oh, yes.
But anyway.
Oh, we'll bring you back on the show. Don't you worry about that.
And so I said, sure. And then, we made the arrangements, and I ended up going to and teaching at the University of the West Indies as a faculty member there.
Mhm.
And the 1 year turned to 2 and then 3 years. And I came this close to actually making it permanent because the job ended up being posted as a permanent position.
Oh, wow.
And I heard later that, it was between me and one other person who was a colleague,
Mhm.
and each of us had qualifications. I was a North American specialist.
Yeah.
He wasn't. But he was from the Caribbean, and so he ended up getting the job. So I came back here and finished my PhD, etc. And then all these adventures with the arts and with the
Absolutely.
arts council followed. So, but those 3 years were really amazing to me. I mean, I miss it. Not the beaches and not the, but the people, and especially the language and how people spoke.
So I have lots of questions around that. So what was it like for you? Was that your first time traveling to a country of as such?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it must have been
first time to a third world country and learn the challenge and all that. Yeah. So it was brand new for me.
You, and especially at those times, we're talking about 25 years ago here, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking a person like you will definitely stand out for sure, especially those days. Sure, things have changed now, obviously, and so on. And so, what was it like for you, though, apart from the teaching aspect, but like the cultural piece? Like, what was it like for you?
Well, I always felt welcome, but at the same time, you knew you were an expat.
Absolutely.
And I never imagined that I could be part of day-to-day life, and it's different than here. It's
very different, yeah.
Very different in terms of how immigrants and all that, because it's such a strong culture. It's an oral culture and all that, and there's ways of doing things. The thing is, the longer if I'd come back after 1 year, I would have thought I knew certain things about how the culture operates. But the longer I stayed, the more that even familiar things were actually different than we have here.
Yeah.
And so you respect the culture and you learn the nuances and all of that. And to me, it was just such a privilege being there. I was always, like I said, welcomed and treated well. When I came there, I remember coming the first day and being introduced to one person, another person, another person. So I was introduced to like 100 people in one day. And so the next day I went back on campus, and then I couldn't remember all the people.
Wow.
So I just said hello to everyone, just in case. So I got a reputation of this friendly guy from Canada.
Yeah, so I will. We will take a couple minutes break, or but when we come back, I want to quickly share with you, if that's okay, my experience when I came to Canada in 1993. But it looks like when I came here, that's when you shifted yourself. That's when you leave the country for 2 years. Oh, that's when you came back.
So we arrived at the same time.
Oh, there. Okay. So you had some of that, which was nice. But I would like to share with you a little bit. My experience when I came here in 1993, it definitely was a cultural shock as well too. But I have some question around that. Your experience there, how you have used that, here, because you work for an organization that really welcome all culture.
Yes.
We are aware of that, and so I would assume that your experience there definitely made it a little bit more easier to at least understand a different culture. To adjust and so on, because if you were to speak, let's say, you were to speak with somebody from Jamaica, for example, it wouldn't be too much of a big deal anymore, because you've been there, you've heard the accent, you kind of know the kind of stuff they do, the kind of food they eat, all of that. So I would like to know more about that for sure. I'm sure our listeners and so on would like to know more. If you happen to tune into us for the very first time, you're listening to our new talk show, Let's Chit Chat with Narine Dat, on 102.7 CKMS FM. And obviously, it's our pleasure to bring to you this weekly talk show. This is a local initiative with a global impact, is what we would like to say. If you have questions or comments, you can give us a call at 519-884-2567. But we would prefer if you can email us at mcnarine@hotmail.com. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back. But keep in mind that there are 3 different ways to listen to us. You can listen to us on the regular dial, that's the radio. You can listen to us on Rogers Digital Cable 946 for those of you who have the Rogers Digital box. And of course, worldwide on the web, songfm.ca. We are going to be back in a couple minutes more because you have so much rich stories to share here. And this is just the start of it. So we'll be right back. All right, we are back. You're listening to Let's Chit Chat with Narine Dat on 102.7 CKMS FM. And we are here with our special guest today, Marinus. I'm so glad I say your name correctly. So thank you, sir, for coming. We are almost halfway through our show. Keep in mind, if you have any question for us here, you can always send that question to mcnarine@hotmail.com. If you're watching to us through social media, you can send us your question there for Marinus. But I know just before break, we were obviously talking about, you were talking about your experience, in Jamaica there as a professor, I guess, right? As a professor. And during that time myself, I came, that's when I migrated to Canada here in Kitchener, and so obviously it was a cultural shock for me as well too. But another day when we are in a situation where our guests happen to get stuck in traffic or cannot show up and so on, I probably use that time to talk more of me and so on. But today I want to focus on you. But I just thought I should mention about my cultural shock. Obviously, it was different. It's a whole different thing. Guyana only has about 750,000 people living there, and here you come here is all different. But I mean, compared to during those time and now, it's a big difference. So I think things are changing, not necessarily in a bad way. Things are changing in a good way. So do you have any project happening right now? I know last time I visited you, you were working on. You guys were just starting, rebuilding back the physical space, where you work right now and so on. And I can assure you that I will make the time to stop by, so don't worry about that. But where are we at with that? Maybe you should let people know what you offer there too, So
Well, at the Common Studio now we've settled into. It still feels like a new space, although in February it'll be 2 years since we moved.
No.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And it's by the Kitchener Market in what used to be called the East End, the market
that's right.
district
Yeah.
of Kitchener. Very interesting part of the city, because we used to be on Queen Street above the Queen Street Commons Cafe, across the street from the Walter, and it's just totally different, right? It's like it's a 5-minute walk, but it's like a different city in the part of town. I know you work in that part of town too. So.
I know, it's so true though. You brought up a good point, because I mean, I visited the old location before. You probably are aware. You knew I was part of that first documentary that right?
Yes.
So I visited that space, and you are so right. And even because keep in mind it's on King Street downtown, you know what I mean. And what I like about that space, and even from the outside, apart from the warmness of the people and so on, I actually like the color. I like that. I like that color, for example. It's different,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what is it that you offer there, or what is it that that space offer to the public, for example?
So we're a community tools project of the Working Center. And there's other community tools projects of the Working Center.
Of course, yeah.
Our focus is on digital media, digital storytelling.
That's right. Yeah.
Filmmaking, videography, sound, anything to do with digital media, and we have the tools to do anything you want to do in that field. A full range of cameras, sets of DSLRs, and ones that you can learn on, and ones that are broadcast quality, and then we also have a cinematic quality, the Red Scarlet X camera.
Yeah.
We have lighting and grip equipment. We're especially strong there because we have a partnership with a company called Lighthouse Incorporated. It's run by a guy called Tony Smith, who's a lighting and grip professional. He'd accumulated all this equipment, and he came to us and said, "Look, if I put my equipment with yours, we'll rent it out and we'll split the proceeds." So we're really strong in that.
Oh, fantastic.
And also sound and all of that kind of thing. So we have it all. And then we also have terminals, workstations. There's 4 workstations with the software you need to edit, that kind of thing. 3 are Mac-based and 1 is PC-based.
Oh, wow.
And then a 5th one in the basement that's the most up-to-date and advanced. And in the basement we have what's called a coved studio. It's basically a cold room is one that has the corners all rounded out. And normally it's painted green, so you've got a three-dimensional green screen for recording. And as you know, when you record in front of the green screen, you can replace that green with any image. So I can sit there and sing, and you can put me in the Swiss Alps or something like that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. That's great. So do you have enough traffic? Do you have people coming in, utilizing the services, the equipment? Because we have in the past, for events, we have rented cameras. I've had, volunteers help us out to videotape or Caribbean concerts and so on. And believe it or not, it worked out well. I'll tell you why. Because one, those fellas, they were learning as well too. They want to learn stuff. And so it was an opportunity for them to really learn and put pieces together and all of that. And they did a good job, I can tell you for sure, better than what I could have done. And we rented at your place there, and it worked out well because one, it was reasonable. The price, we got exactly what we needed. So we didn't rent stuff that that we didn't need. We rent whatever we needed for the occasion, so that worked well. They could fit our budget, all of that. It was like locally here in Kitchener as well, and stuff like that. And so it worked really well for us. So do you have people coming, like you have enough traffic moving along kind of thing? There's always need for more people.
It's steady and it's a wide range. Because we're so strong in the lighting, a lot of the smaller commercial places in town use our equipment.
Oh wow.
And because if it wasn't for this, they'd have to go to Toronto to get what they need, right? So that, and we have people who are serious filmmakers on the artistic side of things. And then we have people from the community who are just interested in learning more, that kind of thing. That's the main clientele for the open studio space. And then also groups of various kinds, like churches come in. They need to record a sermon. Someone needs to record something that's happening at a wedding, or we have all kinds of people come through. But there's always room for more. There's usually stuff left, and also we're not that well known. I mean, people walk by. It doesn't help when you change your name, Multicultural Cinema Club, to the Common Studio, so we're still kind of a best kept secret kind of thing.
No, you brought up a good point. I'm aware that the physical space is there because you give me a walkthrough when I was there last. I rented stuff in the past. I see the benefit of it and so on. You brought up a good point. Not everybody will be aware that everything is pretty much right there. And I always say one thing. I always say, that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So meaning that the things that we're looking for is like right here, but people don't know, and then they kind of give themselves extra stress for nothing. I have to go to Toronto. How do I get to Toronto? All of that. And so I think just the traveling alone, by not having to go there, or even Guelph. I think Guelph has something similar.
Yes. Ed Video.
Yes.
And we're always in communication with them. Our memberships, like to rent, you have to be a member, and it costs $75
for a year. Yeah.
And our membership, if our members can rent from Ed Video, and Ed Video's members can rent from us, and we also try to make sure our prices are about the same. Membership costs $75 there too, because they're artist runs operation that predates ours. They go back to the 80s. And so we support one another.
I think that's a beautiful thing. So, I work as a job developer, and we will talk more about this towards the end of this show here. But I work as a job developer, and so I'm always curious to know, and understand different sector. So whether that be, the entertainment, whether that be the arts, because arts is something. I mean, from time to time, generally speaking, arts for some reason seems to be a struggle. I find, like, for people to actually get into the arts industry. Am I seeing it wrong or what? Because
it is a challenge. It's very, very difficult. It's a
to make a money
life. It's a tough choice. You often, your parents don't let you say you're going to go into theater or you're going to be a visual artist, that kind of thing. Society doesn't respect it like it should. Now, I think that can change.
Absolutely.
And I think, first of all, it's really important important way a part of our economy, much more important than people realize.
Oh yeah.
More people work in the creative industries than do in the automotive industry, you know, if you're making cars and all that. So it's not recognized the importance as it is now, but part of the reason why I think it's so important to promote the arts and also have it expand is it's one form of employment, first of all, that's close to what people love to do.
Oh yeah.
But it's environmentally not very damaging, right? What does it take to a play or a work of art, that kind of thing, compared to accumulating consumer goods and all of that? It's one of the things we can do for one another and be paid, have exchange go back and forth, that doesn't cause that kind of damage. And I can't imagine that every time a new generation of engineers come out and there's new ways that people can do things without human input, like robots and all that kind of thing, self-driving cars, self-driving trucks. I mean, every field people are replaced through technology.
For sure.
What are we going to do? I mean, and I think actually one of the things we can do is work in the arts. It's something human beings have done since the barrier. It's one thing that, you know, you need food, you need to be safe from your enemies, you need to be healthy, but what do people do after that? They do dances, they do artwork, they so I think it's a natural human activity, more natural than accumulating consumer goods. And so if we switch towards that kind of production and make that part of what an economy should, I think that will make the transition to the future a lot more smooth and than it's going to be if we don't make those kind of changes.
You know, you brought up a good point. The arts itself, it really allows somebody to be to really be themselves, but in such of a creative way. Because I can tell you, like when we started off our Caribbean Dreams concert, obviously, apart from giving opportunity, you know, to local artists to showcase their talent and all of that, and in some cases, many of them for the first time, all of that, right? Apart from them having that kind of opportunity, one thing I can tell you personally that I have grown professionally. I will give you a few examples. Even, and you've seen me, like even the clothing I've worn, you remember when we went for an event and I had the clothing, right?
Yeah.
And so on, right? So because it was like an arts organization organized that event, I just felt that, you know, I want to step out of my comfortable zone and be a little bit different and do something that's creative, you know, and the kind of thing. But honestly, if it wasn't for me to be part of the arts in my own way, I probably would have not had the confidence, right, to kind of because all of a sudden you're not going to do that one way, wake up and I'm going to be as creative as I can, right? It's gradually there. And that's one of the reasons when we do our show, you know, like because we started off by creating you know, designing, we have, you know, our own thing because of the budget, small budget and all of that. So we started doing our own little thing on our own and all of that. And then I'm saying to myself, you know, that it wasn't for the event and the arts, like we probably would have not even recognized our own potential, really. No kidding, eh? Yeah. And then and I think for us it's really motivated. And then I can see other people who participated, and you know, and the arts, you brought up a good point. The arts, if we work towards it, it is possible for us to really utilize it to make a difference and really strengthen it, because people that, I mean, on our show, I know last time when we were at that event, I want to separate the two events. That's why I'm saying that event, you know, referring to when we were there. I know people were trying to see, well, how can we fund the arts, all of that. But one of the things we do, because for me personally, it's not always about the money right away, because keep on, you have to start somewhere. Because if you have a passion for something, and especially with the arts, you know, if it meant to be, and if you got a little bit lucky, sure, getting paid for it, I think that's great. But in our case, we are making a difference with the arts in this region here, but not necessarily me getting any money. But what I can tell you is that people who have come on our show for the first time, they're now performing professionally, right? We have had DJ who would never perform and didn't know how to operate like all of this equipment and all of that, right? And now we have guys performing every week in and out of the region. And I said to myself, you know what? I didn't get any pay for it, but I created that platform. We struggle together, not when say me along with other people. It's never a one-man thing, you know that, right? But we do our bits and pieces together. But I can tell you the impact, and people will never understand it because we have guys working out of the region, all of that busy. We have, and people are seeing what we're doing here. We've had people all the way from Florida came to our event here in Kitchener. Their own expense artists pay their way just to be part of the event because they've seen what we're doing here and they see the uniqueness of it. And I think once people, there are lots of events happening, and it's hard for me to compare your event and mine and all because we have so many things going on. But I think that every event has its own uniqueness. I think that's what's a beautiful thing, right? I can't say my event.
Involvement with those events, putting them on and helping make it. That's also how the arts enrich the lives of our people in our community.
But the arts. Speaking of that, I have to say though that we do need the support from each other, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, because the thing is like and because people there's always room for improvement. There's always different ways to do things. There's always easier way to do things and all of that. And so I think if we lend our talent and so on sometime, because you don't necessarily lend your talent in vain. Because for me, when people are coming and they're performing, let's say they're performing voluntarily, they want to lend their talent, they're not leaving their empty-handed. We might not be able in a position to offer them cash dollars, but they're not leaving empty-handed there because the impact that they're making, if it's a young person, they're probably influencing people of their age to kind of thing. Like my father, for example, he did stand-up comedy on our Caribbean Dreams concert earlier this year for the very first time. He is in his 70s, and he always wanted to do that. But it took a while for him to really get to the point to be on that stage and speak in front of a mic and stuff like that. And so it's so you needed support and so on. So I'm glad you brought it up. So what's new what's happening new? I know you were all over the place too. You're all over the places apart from your you work in in the arts there at the what's it called again? What commons you call it?
The Commons Studio.
The Commons Studio. I got it the opposite way. Studio Commons Studio. So what you don't have to get into details and you don't even have to answer if you don't want to, but what was the name change all about? Just wanted to be different, I guess, and wanted to kind of.
There was the Queen Street Commons Cafe below, and we were above it. The Multicultural Cinema Club. It was started by a filmmaker from Syria. He Azam Foukalade, and he had this vision, and he made it happen, and he chose the name Multicultural Cinema Club, which had certain positive aspects, but at the same time it was confusing for people. It wasn't exclusively multicultural, and we were actually open to anyone, although because of the multicultural focus from the beginning, we always had a very diverse, and the working center too has, so we have a diverse clientele, no doubt. Cinema, that's not really media, it's not digital media, it's more like film appreciation.
It's more specific to like
right. And club was confusing to people. Like, what is it? Like, is it like a service club? What is So all three words were problematic, and we thought we'll just keep it simple. And originally it was supposed to be the Queen Street Commons Studio.
But because you moved,
associated, but now we're not anything. It's the Commons Studio. But the Commons is an important word because there's a tradition of the Commons, and it's in the name Commons Cafe from the Working Center, but we have that too. We're there for everybody. Our workspace is open. People can and it's great being on the ground floor rather than upstairs because people see you, they come in, and it is a welcoming place. And it's a kind of intersection with where you have all kinds of people connected through a common interest.
It is a good location. There's no question about that. It's just a couple steps from where I work, obviously. So I think that move wasn't a bad move. And as I mentioned earlier, change is not necessarily a bad thing. So the fact that the name was changed, because I can see why it probably was confusing before. Because speaking of multicultural, we do also have a multicultural organization too, like the multicultural, right? So so you never know. You could always be mixed up with first timers in the area or newcomers in the area. When they hear about multicultural, they probably thought it has some relationship there too, although they have their own thing going on and so on. So No, so I think I think that, in my opinion, anyways, I think that was a great move. And the fact that, I mean, we knew from the beginning too that, I mean, the space is a welcoming space. Like, we all know all of that, but the fact that you mentioned that, like, I have no doubt about that. I think that's great, and it's amazing that. So it goes to show, though. It goes to show that name can be an important thing. Eh?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because it kind of because I would assume, when you see or hear of the word multicultural, you're just thinking maybe only ethnic stuff happening there, probably, right?
Yeah.
But you are so right. Like, it's open. If you have an ethnic project, then that's fine too. We do it at the conference.
Especially, right? That's our founding tradition,
Exactly.
right? We want to keep that strong,
Yes,
yeah.
for sure. No, so I think that's great. So, if the people who are listening, and people who are, because I, as a job developer, I talk to people who are looking for all kinds of work, and some people, I know that they're passionate about the arts, or they're passionate about something. But for the people who are passionate about the arts, like, what advice do you have for them, really? Because as a job developer, I always try my best to really encourage people to try your best to stick with what you are passionate about. Because for me personally, it doesn't matter if it's the arts, whether that be, doesn't matter what form of arts, whether that be the media, print arts, whatever, right? It's important to try your best to follow along that, because if you're going to spend 3-4 years, in college and so on, if you want to follow your heart, then that's how things should be, I think. But what advice do you have, really? Because you've been in it, you've kind of left it and gone and do something a little bit different as well. You're still in it in different ways, you're supporting it, really. So, like, what advice do you have, like, for the new folks, especially, they have a passion for arts, they can feel in their heart that, this is what they want to do, but they're not seeing potential out there. But for me, the potential is always there.
Yes.
You have to seek for it.
I think one thing
Yeah.
is to be ready for, you can't imagine all the possibilities that there could be. So you have to be open to
Absolutely. Oh,
possibilities.
yeah.
And also you have to be receptive to them, but for them to reach you, you have to get out there. So the more you circulate, the better. You don't get out there with the idea that you're, making connections and it's all for your career. You go out there to be part of your community, and then opportunities that you can't even imagine will reach you. And you get more opportunities by putting yourself, volunteering, working with people, all that kind of thing.
So you just want to lift it and put it back on. You can just lift it and put it back down. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So yes. So we actually we are live here at 102.7 CKMS FM, and from time to time we're gonna have a little bit of distraction and so on here. So that's what happens when you do a live show, kind of thing there. But you brought up a good point regarding this arts thing for people who want to get into it. Obviously, networking is important and all of that. Making known, of yourself and kind of getting to know people. But you cannot just go network with people and just thinking, okay, well, this is how it's gonna work. You have to do a little bit more. Because for me, honestly, if you're really passionate about something, and we're gonna use the arts for an example, because that's where most of your strength lies. You have to kind of give a little bit too. Because if you're passionate about arts, and let's say you have a specific talent, right? I think it's okay to show it off at events and so on. Like, lend your talent. Let people see, because once you start to do that, you're lending your talent. People get to know who you are, and opportunities can actually come because people start to recognize that. When people recognize your uniqueness,
and just do stuff.
Yeah.
And volunteer. Most jobs I've ever gotten, in the end, I started as a volunteer. I was on the board of the Arts Council, and then
Good for you.
And then I became the executive director. I used to write letters to the editor about mostly political things. It was during the Harris era.
Yes.
So I wrote these letters, and then at one point, the publisher of the paper said, "Hey, I like that letter that you wrote. You want to write a weekly column for us?"
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So the more you get out there and do stuff, the greater the chances are that opportunities.
Thank you for saying. Oh no, I'm glad you said it, because opportunities. Like, I can speak for myself here. And many people too. Like, opportunities wouldn't always come just like that. You have to get out there. You have to seek. And one of the things I'll say too, I'm sure you'll agree with me, that don't be afraid of failure. right? Because keep in mind, we wouldn't always be successful at our very first try. That's for sure, you know? And so we have to keep pushing, we have to keep moving and all of that. And so, I mean, so speaking of volunteer, I'm assuming that you have lots of volunteer at the Studio Commons, or Commons Studio, sorry.
Yeah. Well, actually, if you're a regular part of the studio, we don't even call it volunteers. We call it you're a member of the studio, and you don't have to pay. You just have to be interested in what we do,
wanting to
and be part of what we do. Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, no, and that's a good thing you mentioned too, because when people are volunteering, right, sometimes people get mixed up, and sometimes I'm not saying that it happened there, but I can see that it's not happening there because I did a placement at the working center too, so I can understand a little bit. So you want to make sure that volunteers feel a sense of belonging there as well too, because keep in mind the only difference, and I will say this because I volunteer a lot as well too, right? So just so for me, one thing I can tell you is that you want to make sure that volunteer feel a sense of belonging, but also you want to make sure that they feel as if they're making a contribution. Yes. And people are appreciating what they're doing. You want to separate it too, and the fact that you mentioned that you don't even use the word volunteer anymore, it's a beautiful thing, because I actually remember we did a project for an organization, Habitat for Humanity, actually, in Brampton, in Bramford, a few years ago. And they mentioned something that was very interesting. They don't use the term volunteer, they're staff. And so they will be unpaid staff, obviously. Yeah. So everybody's a staff there. So it's kind of, you're on the same level in terms of communication wise and so on. So it's not like somebody come in there and say, oh, he's a volunteer or she's a volunteer. So I like that part of it.
That's a great way to be. It's reciprocal because we have tools and equipment. So you have access to all of those. You have access to the connections. So we can give something in return. But the ideal would be that people come in and they don't even realize that the person is here as a member, or as being paid employee. The Commons Cafe works that way, the Queen Street Commons Cafe. You can't tell. There's people there serving you.
Yes.
And they don't make any distinction. Some are volunteers, some are job training people, some are paid staff, but you don't know.
Yes, no, and it's so true, because I've seen situation where people volunteer at an organization because they're passionate about obviously wanting to give back. They're gaining experience as well too, but I've seen situation where people volunteer their time because they believe in themselves and they believe in organization and they believe in a certain kind of work. And I've seen where they've gotten paid opportunities, and I've seen them gotten promotion as well too, right? But have they not taken the time to kind of really get into that community and say, you know what, this is what I want to do. I will do all my bits and pieces, because you just can't lay back too and thinking opportunity will come to you. I'm not that lucky, by the way. I've forgotten some really great opportunities in life, but they did not come easy. I can tell you that for sure, and so on. So I think that's great. And so, is there any? We have a few, we have 3 minutes more left here. So, is there any final thing you would like to say to our listeners and viewers, particularly when it comes to you talk about the volunteer piece? Anything? I'm leaving it open to you. But before we leave, I want you to make sure you take 30 seconds or so to tell me something that you are very grateful for. We try to use the show as well to kind of put a positive spin to it, and I know that there are going to be so many things, but what is one of the things that you think that you are grateful for in life? We should.
Well, I'm very grateful for being part of the Commons Studio. I ended up there accidentally. I used to be on the advisory, and the Arts Council helped start it with it. But now I'm there 3 days a week, dealing with the most amazing people that come and go through that space, and being part of an organization that's so remarkable. And the message I want to get out is that the term Common Studio is from a place that is common and shared. It is a welcoming place. So if you're in the market area, drop by at 256 King Street East, and we'll show you around. And digital media is part of our lives in ways. It's almost a kind of literacy now.
I know, absolutely. Yeah.
So if you're interested in expanding your digital media literacy, then come.
So there you have it. Like, you have just gotten, I think if people realize, you've just gotten an open invitation, really, to visit you anytime. You've always given me that open invitation, anyways. So and I appreciate to I appreciate the fact that you took the time to kind of take me around when it was not in full operation, really. And but I was able to visualize, to see, because I was looking at the space, and I knew that there will be opportunities for good things to happen. And it goes to show that with hard work that everybody basically put in there, and the people who are utilizing will see for themselves as well too. So I think that's a great thing. So I mean, as you know, I'm a job developer. So if I know of anybody looking for something that along that line, I would like to kind of get a better sense about digital media and stuff like that.
We have
for
interns,
sure.
we have high school co-op students. It's a place for particularly people who have graduated. Then you're out there in the world. You don't have all the equipment from college and all that.
It's extremely difficult.
It's a good place to be. I would actually like to develop programs, particularly for new graduates. Because they've spent all that time, and we as a society have spent a lot of time supporting their education, and now we want to make sure they can contribute to society in the maximum way. And sometimes that's really difficult in the arts, especially when you're to rely on equipment and resources, etc.
Oh yes, for sure. So I hope that you work on that, because there's no question that when you have a recent graduate, they have lots to worry about. They have their tuition debt, in many cases to worry about, and so on.
Graduates, and then new Canadians, people come in here all the time with experience in other countries, in something related to digital media, radio, television, writing for a newspaper, whatever the case may be, or in the arts. And now you've come here in Canada. Often it's Canadian experience and all that.
For sure.
But we waste that talent if we don't bring it out. If we have people who are like people say it about doctors, but it's also true of people in the arts.
Of course, for sure.
We are very well equipped because we were founded by somebody who was in that situation.
For sure.
And that's what we're there to do.
All right, and so that wraps it up for our edition of Let's Chit Chat with Narine Dat. We are here live every Wednesday from 10 in the morning up until 11 o'clock rather. Eastern time. So please tune into us again next week, Wednesday. We are here live. Also, our Caribbean Spice radio show stays the same. Nothing has changed with that. It's on obviously on Sundays from 7:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. So I personally would like to take the opportunity to thank Marinus for taking the time to share so much with us here. Do share our video though, because it's going to be available even after the show. It will be available on YouTube as well. Take the opportunity to do that. But I knew that we will only get to the tip of the iceberg here with our conversation, but we will have him back again at some point when he's available, because he's also busy and so on, but we'll have him back again. But thank you so much, and we will see you again next week. Until next time, this is Narine and Marius wishing you a great today and even a better tomorrow.